I think we'll go ahead and get started. We'll let other people kind of filter in and see what happens. Um, Welcome everybody. My name's Cujo. For those I think everybody I've seen in here before, maybe not BDA, I can't remember. If you've been in here, BDA, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. I'm Cujo. We got Dave over here in the red polo. We've got Alex up there in the red t-shirt, and we got Dan up there in the blue t-shirt. Um, I'm rocking the FPVFC shirt.
Very
Which
nice.
you can get on our website there. If anybody doesn't have one.
I think somebody just bought one today.
Nice. So today's episode is going to be kind of a comment roundtable on the FAA Advisory Circular on the exception for limited recreational operations of unmanned aircraft. Thank you to Dan and Alex for your great comments that I was able to utilize to craft our document. I am going to link to the advisory circular if anybody kind of wants to follow along here. We broke this down into comments. We're running 7 full pages of comments that we are going to be submitting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's long. We are going to be submitting this. We'll put it up on our website as well. For anybody who wants to utilize these comments as a response, this comment period does close, I believe, next week.
August
The
7th.
7th. Okay, cool, perfect. So it gives you guys some time to kind of peruse this. Add your comments, take some away, whatever you agree or don't agree with. I think everybody will be pretty happy with at least our response. We'll see what they do with it from this perspective, or from this point. But I do want to kind of go through it. Let me share my screen here. Pick the right screen here. There. Oh, that's gonna be small. I'm gonna blow this up as big as I can. Dan, how's that looking there?
That's readable.
Okay. So, what I've got here is I list at the top of each section the actual section number from the advisory circular. However, if you don't want to follow along in the actual document, I do quote the offending point that we are referencing, so that you kind of know what's going on. So the first segment is in 1.7.3. The operation of a UAS can endanger other aircraft, people, or property when flight is conducted in a careless or reckless manner, or in a manner that creates an undue hazard for persons or properties. Our response is that this serves no purpose but to promote fear around UAS. To date, there have been no deaths attributed to UAS, and actual incidents have been very minimal. Flying UAS has always and will continue to be the safest way to take advantage of the national airspace and should be talked about as such. By continuing to pursue a fear-driven basis around regulations, the FAA fosters an animus towards this segment of operators and pilots. If this is to remain in the advisory circular, recommend citing sources and studies that contribute to its claim. So you'll see through these things that if it's completely egregious or something that really, if they're going to keep it, really determines sources, we ask for those.
Yeah, how does this fit the mission of the document at all to clarify the regulations and how to follow them? It's like you say, it's just fluff to scare people.
Yeah, and it makes absolutely no sense to include any of that in this document. So section 174, the administrator may pursue enforcement action against a person operating a UAS under the exception. I'm just going to stop right there. We all understand that enforcement in some fashion or form is likely to happen. However, while we understand that enforcement is a consequence to flying recklessly, incentives to fly safely and to be an ambassador for safe flights would be looked upon much more favorably, similar to General Aviation's Wings program. This was a recommendation from Alex. You want to describe what the Wings program is a little bit, Alex?
So the Wings program is like a credit system that you get by doing different, like, so the FAA safety team, it's part of the FAA safety team. And so at the FAA safety team, there are usually there's webinars, there's different courses that you can take. And when you join and participate in those, they'll go over different topics in aviation safety. And when you complete those, you'll get a Wings credit. When you build enough Wings credit, there are certain rewards, I believe that there are. Since I'm focusing on drones and UAS with the FAST team, Wings doesn't really have any effect on us, but I do know that there are some like benefits that pilots get, and things to make it so that there's actual incentives for it.
Yeah,
so
I've accumulated
FAA could
accumulated some Wings points from attending drone-related FAA webinars. I don't know what to do with them, like you said. I assume it's more for like pilots when they have to. They probably have to get recertified, take different tests, and if they can participate in these continuing education things, they probably count towards their education they have to do each year.
So if we had something like this for recreational UAS or UAS in general, then it could get more people as something, oh, I do this with this. We have these rewards, and gets more people to learn more about safety.
Josh, I like this comment. Could we change General Aviation's to FAA Safety Team's Wings program?
Yep.
I think a good name for the UAS version could be Props.
There you go.
Almost everything has a propeller somewhere in it.
True story. Guys, also, if you have ideas that you would like to see in some of these comments, feel free to drop them in the chat here, so that, or speak up so that we can make those changes.
Yeah, if you
again, this is
you should put in the comments maybe the props thing, because the FAA seems to really love acronyms and cute names, and if you tell them to use that word, they have to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay, Alex. The assignment is what is PROPS going to stand for?
Yep.
Yeah, you can do that quietly while we get to the next point.
Well, you can make it a recursive.
Is Wings I didn't think Wings was an acronym.
It probably isn't, but they love acronyms. And if you make it a recursive one where the first P stands for props, like props go to the
recreational operation.
There you go. All right. So in some of these numbers get long. So in 22123, good luck with that. UAS as part of an educational program that's chartered by a recognized CBO. We appreciate them including this in the advisory circular. We love that CBOs can provide educational programs that would allow members of that CBO to train others how to fly UAS safely. Very simple. This is the first thing that we took kind of major issue with. So in 2231, FPV devices are goggle-like viewing devices. Again, this is just for clarification. While many pilots do use FPV goggles to fly FPV, there are many others who use a screen such as a tablet or a portable LED LCD display to fly FPV. It's important to establish this. Reason being is that people need to understand what they're seeing when they look at a pilot who's flying one way or another, especially since these advisory circulars get pushed out to law enforcement agencies and whatnot as well. Second part is that they put in there that these FPV devices often provide a restricted view of the surrounded area. Our response is that this statement is fundamentally biased and factually incorrect. If this statement is to remain, the FAA must cite sources and research to the affirmative. We would posit, as we have many times before, that situational awareness is actually enhanced substantially versus almost any crewed aircraft pilot. We have fewer obstructions blocking our views, no instruments, aircraft frames, or other flight crew's bodies, and often have almost as wide of a field of view as a human eye, depending on cameras on board the UAS. Coupling that together with the ability to yaw, pitch, and roll the aircraft much faster than any crewed aircraft, awareness is enhanced much beyond that of a crewed aircraft pilot. Please remove this statement. So
Bruce was making a good point. We can hear things very well,
that's
which
true
is different
too.
than crewed aircraft.
Let's see. I'm just gonna put a
Leave yourself a
comment in
note.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And TechChat was saying that there was a reference to tablets, but I've done a search on the circular, can't find it yet.
The circular mentions tablets or screens somewhere. Yeah, I didn't see it in there, but if you can find it, let us know.
So BDA is asking, is it recommended to have another set of goggle screen / watch? I'm not sure what you're asking. Maybe that was back when we were commenting on the FPV saying FPV is all done with goggles, and we're saying no, a lot of FPV is also done with just a screen and not a pair of goggles.
Right, and we're not talking in this instance about a visual observer, a second individual watching the UAS without goggles.
We're saying the situational awareness, even with wearing goggles, is still better than a crewed aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I don't. The advisory circular is not recommending you have, a backup set or anything like that. Always good to have a backup set. I mean, for people questioning, concerned citizens, cops. So the advisory circular is not advising that by any stretch, and neither are we per se. However, at the same time, it's always nice to have a second pair if you've got one available, because that way you can take people for ride-alongs and basically describe. So a lot of people who have issues with what we're doing don't understand that we're not out there, being peeping toms or, scouring the countryside for sensitive buildings or anything like that. It gives them an advantage for being able to see what exactly it is we're doing.
And for BDA, definitely, if we have that second, like Josh is saying, if you have that second pair for them, for concerned citizens or cops to look through while you're flying, you can really de-escalate the situation and show them a good time.
Absolutely. All right, so next section, 224. This is obviously out of the FAA Reauthorization Act. The aircraft is operated in a manner that does not interfere with and gives way to any manned aircrafts. The recreational flyer of a unmanned aircraft is responsible for knowing at all times the position of the aircraft in relation to other aircraft, for maintaining safe distance from other aircraft, and for giving the right of way to all manned aircraft, airborne vehicles, and launch and reentry vehicles. This needs to be, our response is this needs to be clarified to specify crewed varieties of all of these. UAS pilots often fly in close proximity to one another when in a recreational setting, and this could be construed as to deem that it is against regulations. Take for an example an FPV multi-rotor or a fixed wing race, where oftentimes there are several pilots in the air at the same time flying the same course. So just a little bit of a clarification to make sure that it's all, manned. And we'll reference that same kind of response again several times throughout this document. This one says recreational flyers should not contact ATC facilities to obtain airspace authorizations to fly in controlled airspace. Our response is this needs to be reworded, as it still implies that a pilot can call ATC for airspace authorizations, that they really shouldn't. Perhaps recreational flyers cannot obtain airspace authorizations to fly in controlled airspace by contacting ATC facilities. Now, the second part of that is this next one, where the recreational flyer should submit the request at least 90 days prior to the proposed flight to allow the FAA time to review the airspace and the justification provided for the flight. So this is in relation to flying around airports that are not actively or currently on the LANT system. So the LANT system, if you're familiar with it, allows you to gain almost an instantaneous airspace authorization. However, for any facility, that is not on the LANT system, they're requiring a 90 days prior notice. So our response is that 90 days is far too long in advance to request an airspace authorization for a flight at or around a facility not serviced by LANTs. This needs to be reduced dramatically. What's the incentives for airports to comply with the LANT system, and why haven't all airports come online as of now? This establishes roadblocks to entering the national airspace and an undue burden without an appropriate or effective solution from the FAA. I'm checking on comments here.
Guess we just have to every day submit a request for 90 days in the future to fly.
There you go.
So you've got every day covered.
This section deals with the aircraft being registered and marked with its registration number and proof of registration. It needs to have added aircraft that are over 250 grams or 0.55 pounds.
Yeah, if they're trying to use this document to clarify rules, they've just skipped over the 250 gram part and said that you have to put this on everything, which is not true.
Absolutely. So just a little bit of clarification. Same thing with the next one. Deals with labels as well, and marking their aircraft. So again, if over 250 grams or 0.55 pounds, just adding some language. Institutions of higher education, the JROTC, or any other entity may choose to request recognition as a CBO as described in paragraph 3.2. So in the circular in 332, it tells you to go to 3.2 to be recognized as a CBO, which then points you to 3.1 for the requirements. But using that logic, do institutions of higher learning, JROTC, or other educational students that may want to become a CBO, do they still need to be a 501c3? So just a point of clarification. 343. A comprehensive set of safety guidelines may include topics that span beyond the limitations listed at such and such. The FAA encourages but does not require CBOs to develop comprehensive sets of safety guidelines to enhance the safety and security of all operations in the national airspace and people and property on the ground. There was an earlier statement in the document on 3114 that this statement contradicts the requirement that a CBO must provide a comprehensive set of safety guidelines. Does a CBO need to provide these or not? So it's just a kind of, one says you do, one says that it's recommended but not required. So who knows?
As well as the requirement for the comprehensive set of safety guidelines was in 44809 in the 2018 Reauthorization Act. So
Right.
That clarification is more of telling them that that's incorrect statement that they have there.
Kind of weird. All right. So obviously, prohibition on modifying UAS and the carriage of hazardous materials or weapons. So apparently, CBOs need to restrict their members from customizing or modifying the aircraft in such a way that creates a danger to the public or the national airspace. CBOs should include a statement prohibiting the carriage of hazardous materials or requiring compliance with applicable laws and rules of carriage of hazardous materials. CBOs should also remind operators that federal law prohibits equipping or arming any UAS with a dangerous weapon. So Alex, no bayonets on the fronts of your drones, okay?
Oops.
I'll
I'll
take
fly
all
them
your fun
indoors.
away. So our response is, this is already in established regulations. There's no need for a CBO to create guidelines that serve only to repeat existing regulations beyond basic safety tenets. Prohibition on engaging in careless or reckless behavior. Guidelines should include information on avoiding careless or reckless behavior. And then they make references to two general aviation books. Our response on this is, while this information is good, UAS aviation is not general aviation, and its principles differ as well. While this information is good, the FAA should make the effort to align these concepts more in tune with UAS flights instead of attempting to force general aviation precepts on UAS.
Yep, the FAA really does seem to like to just grab something they've done over there and stick it over here.
Well, of course, because they
Doesn't
don't have to
always
pay
work.
extra to have somebody type up a document saying what those tenets are. And I mean, that's the thing.
Alex, is general
Yes.
aviation sufficiently general, if you'll forgive the term there, or should we say crewed flight?
I
Because
think general aviation works. I think they're both synonymous with each other, at least when
okay, because I've
I've heard it used.
I've been corrected loudly a couple times.
Okay. And then
But
in that case, maybe.
So we want to change that to crewed aircraft.
Yes, please.
Crewed
Because we capitalized it, it's a reserved meaning. So, it'll be more general if it's crewed aircraft.
Okay. In this section, they make I'm sorry. They make a reference to pre-flight safety, and they do multiple times through the document. And our point of clarification, a lot of times it's you must do a pre-flight safety check, a pre-flight safe assessment and inspection checklist. And so we're just looking for a point of clarification. What's the FAA's definition of pre-flight? Is a pre-flight assessment and inspection checklist needed before every battery pack when multiple flights are to be conducted? Is this up to the operator? What's the threshold for compliance?
Yeah, every time you touch down to the ground and take off again, is that a new flight? Is it every time you change locations? Is it? Yeah.
How am I going to do a pre-flight mid-race after turtle mode?
Right.
Yeah, every time you disarm, is that a new flight when you arm again?
Well,
I mean, as long as you don't touch the ground, disarm and rearm, right?
This topic consumed over an hour of discussion in the ASTM when we were talking about emergency messages. So, there are really people thinking what defines a flight and when is it reset. So I think the question is a good one.
In-flight safety guidelines for in-flight safety should remind recreational flyers to assess the UA's performance continually, monitor the strength of the command and control links, watch for changing weather conditions, etc. Our response is that not all UAS display this information to the pilot. Add if available after the after links. We have several of these where it's just like not all UAS conform to this.
Yeah, the person who wrote this document definitely thinks everybody's flying a DJI with auto GPS and all that.
And that's very evident as you go through it. Post-flight safety. Obviously, the big thing here is the wear and tear per the manufacturer. So guidelines should also consider, these are all safety guidelines that the FAA wants CBOs to implement in order to become a CBO. And this one deals with guidelines that should also consider including recommendations for safely securing the unmanned aircraft between flights to include removing batteries and protecting fragile parts from wear and tear per the manufacturer's recommendations. Not all UAS have manufacturer's recommendations for wear and tear, especially those purchased as individual parts and assembled by the operator. Please use operator discretion for wear and tear.
Nothing I do with my drone on my backpack is going to come close to what happens when you fly it and crash it. And
yeah, I mean, it's like when I'm done for the day, it's like strap it with a bungee cord to the backpack, throw the backpack in the back of the truck, and call it a day. You know, if I bent a prop, oh well. You know, not a big deal.
Right, but we'll be enhancing our own guidelines, and we'll be adding common sense. So, it's a good idea. So if you landed in sand and the motors are scratchy, that's an issue. That's not going to fly well. So that's the sort of thing that we're looking for safety and major equipment fails that we can point out to folks who are newer into FPV.
All right, 34331. I feel like I'm, doing hex codes here or something. So this recommended safety guidelines. If a CBO supports FPV flying, that's the point of this one that we're taking issue with. Back in 3114, it states that a CBO must provide a set of safety guidelines for all aspects of model aviation. The if in this part implies that this is not true. Either allow CBOs to specialize in one or certain types of model aviation or remove the if. If the if is removed, consider rephrasing to when a CBO creates a comprehensive set of guidelines for FPV flying, it should include at least the following minimum guidance for utilizing those for operating UAS using FPV systems.
Or the person who wrote that doesn't believe that FPV flying is part of all.
Right. Apparently, it's got its own
And
thing.
if that's the case, then do we not?
Then none of the rules should
then we
apply.
don't have to worry about rules for FPV. No rules.
All right. So next section is FPV flyers should be proficient in flying their unmanned aircraft without an FPV device prior to starting FPV flights. Now, before I read this, I'm going to start off with a caveat with saying you probably should know how to operate it. However, if you're like me, I can marginally operate it line of sight. Then what we state here is FPV devices make flying an unmanned aircraft easier, and not all operators may have the skill necessary to pilot the aircraft line of sight. Perhaps rephrase this to FPV flyers should have the basic skills necessary to terminate a flight safely if the FPV system fails during the operation. A little easier. I can easily, bring a quad out of the sky. Yeah, disarm. Yeah, that's usually the safest way, to be honest. But even still, I can at least get it to a point where I can safely disarm, right? So
I wonder if we should be stronger there and get rid of the word perhaps. Should we just say rephrase this?
Yeah,
I don't know.
agree with that.
It's not as nice, but
yeah, well,
I do feel like they're looking for tell us what the problem is, tell us how to fix it. So that would fix it.
All right. Visual observers must be co-located with the FPV flyer and maintain visual line of sight with the aircraft at all times. Visual observation of the aircraft must be made with unaided vision, except in the case of vision that is corrected by the use of eyeglasses or contact lenses. Now, this is the first. Vision aids, such as binoculars, may be used only momentarily to enhance situational awareness. Visual observers must be in direct communication with the FPV flyer. Our response is, as per the trust, that little test that they're requiring us to take, the visual observer may have a brief moment of loss of sight of the unmanned aircraft. Please add this clarification to the recommended guideline. Consistency. FPV flyers must have the capacity to see the aircraft at all times. Although a visual observer may be watching the unmanned aircraft, the FPV flyer must ensure that throughout the operation of the unmanned aircraft, he or she would have the ability to immediately see the unmanned aircraft if the FPV device was removed. Our response is, from a biological perspective, no person would be able to immediately see anything moving from a dark environment, such as from behind a set of goggles, to a bright sunlit day. The eyes will take several seconds to adjust to the change in environment. Recommend removing the word immediately.
Yeah, I still question what's their point in that sentence. Like, are they trying to clarify what visual line of sight means? Are they trying to say, oh, we expect everyone who's flying FPV to be able to lift up their glasses, immediately see the drone, and then fly at line of sight back to them? Because that's kind of what the rest of the document gets at, and I disagree. I don't necessarily think that's the right call. And like XJet said before, the best course of action a lot of time is just disarm.
Absolutely. All right. FPV systems should not be used when the weight of the unmanned aircraft exceeds 55 pounds. Our response is, what's the reason for this? Please cite research or risk assessments stating why this needs to be present. If none exist, please remove. Pretty simple. Now, most of anything exceeding 55 pounds has to be certified in a certain way, correct?
Except at a FRIA. Or
Okay.
not a FRIA, but a fixed flying site.
Okay.
When I was going through and looking at the document, the 55 pounds, I thought that was outside the rule, but when I went through 44809, it talked about how over 55 pounds could be flown at fixed flying sites. Because at first I thought it just wasn't within the rule set, but it is.
But I do know, like, the AMA requires, one of their rule requirements is anything over 55 pounds, they have to certify ready for flight, right?
Right. It's effectively a waiver, right?
Yes.
But
All
if
right,
it's over
so
55 pounds, why can't you use it with FPV? I don't.
there's no reason. All
Military
right.
drones use FPV.
Are
All
they
right,
trying to say that
so
Elon Musk can't land his rockets via FPV or something?
all
Okay,
right, so
XJet said in here that if you're deaf, you can't fly FPV. Is there any
that's absolutely
reference?
true. Absolutely, and we reference it later on here.
Okay, so that's something we should take seriously and take issue with.
And we did.
Great, great.
I beat that horse a little bit. All right.
Excellent.
So maintenance of the UAS and its components should be conducted in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Again, not all UAS have manufacturer instructions on maintenance. Please rephrase to maintenance of the UAS and its components should be conducted to the recreational flyer's best judgment or in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions if available. Recreational flyers should routinely check for software updates and, if available, consider updating to the latest manufacturer upgrades prior to flight. Our response here is that the latest software and firmware updates may not always be the best or safest. Often, updates have been known to cause security or stability opportunities. If software or firmware currently on the device is stable and free of these opportunities, it should be up to the operator's discretion for update schedules. Speaking of which, didn't they just publish an firmware update for your V1 goggles?
They did, but I believe the only thing it says in there is supporting a new camera or something. Like it wasn't very clear.
Yeah, just throwing that out there because I know Dave was getting ratchety on that.
Yeah, and
Definitely a hot button of mine.
I think the idea is that this firmware update will block unauthorized cameras from working. So there's no real incentive to install it.
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, flight critical systems, rotors, batteries, controls should be checked for damage prior to flight and repaired or replaced if any damage is found. Our response is obvious if you fly FPV drones. There are many times where minimal damage does not correlate to safety risk. A bent propeller can often be straightened. A scratch on the plastic or carbon fiber frame does not change flight characteristics. Should be changed to if any significant damage that affects the flight characteristics or flight performance of the unmanned aircraft. Control links should be tested prior to flight, and no flight should be attempted if command and control signal strength is anticipated to be inadequate for completion of the flight. Our response here is that this information is not always available, and competing signals in an area can oftentimes lead to unpredictable events with control links. This may not be present at the pre-flight, but can occur during the operation. Please add if shared or available to the recreational flyer at the beginning. Guidance systems and instruments should be accurate and performing as expected. Again, not all UAS have guidance or GPS systems. Add if available. Automated features, same thing. Not all of them have it. Add if available. They also say the expected flight path should be free of other people, aircraft, and obstacles. Our
Goodbye
response
racing.
to that is right. FPV multi-rotor and fixed-wing racing often happens where multiple unmanned aircraft are in the air at the same time, flying around an obstacle course. This would mean FPV racing is not allowed. Additionally, FPV freestyle pilots use natural and human-made features and obstacles to fly around. Please specify people and manned aircraft and remove the word obstacle. Let's see. Again, no manufacturer recommendations. I'm kind of skipping that one. That one's boring. Procedures for night flights. So here they are. Flyers must maintain visual line of sight throughout the flight when flying at night. To achieve this, the FAA recommends the CBO develop a comprehensive set of safety guidelines that include a requirement for CBO members to equip unmanned aircraft with lights that can be seen from 3 statute miles away, and to arrange the unmanned aircraft lights in such a way that allows recreational flyers to determine the orientation of the aircraft. Our response to this is not currently in the regulations in the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 as a requirement of recreational flight. As such, there is no way to enforce this and should not be a requirement of CBOs to enforce this. Additionally, there are many small aircraft available that would not be able to adhere to this burden, as lights strong enough to be seen from 3 statute miles are inherently heavier than some unmanned aircraft can carry.
Or some unmanned aircraft.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So here's where we get into some of the interesting, like deeper stuff. So comprehensive safety guidelines should include certain minimum standards for CBO members to be fit for flight prior to conducting any limited recreational aircraft operation. For example, CBO should prohibit any person from flying an unmanned aircraft, serving as a visual observer, or participating in the operation of a UAS if the person knows or has reason to know that they have a physical or mental condition that would interfere with the safe operation of a UAS. Our response is recreational flight of both unmanned aircraft, both line of sight and FPV, have demonstrated to have a therapeutic effect for people suffering from mental conditions such as PTSD, anxiety, depression, etc. Additionally, there are individuals who have a physical disability that may limit their day to day activities in one form or another, but are more than capable of flying an unmanned aircraft. It is no one person's or one organization's duty to restrict the ability to fly based on that, but should be left to the judgment of the recreational flyer. Recommend removing the sentence. Um, Section 34363 deals with, they call it I'm safe, and there's each of those letters in that acronym stand for different things. One of them is stress. Is the recreational flyer experiencing any psychological or emotional factors which might affect his or her performance? Our response is like many athletes and performers, stress is a part of a UA flight, especially in circumstances such as a multi-rotor and fixed wing races, competitions, demonstrations, etc. Additionally, recreational flyers often fly as a form of stress relief. Recommend changing this to is the recreational flyer experiencing any significant psychological or emotional factors which might deem the flight operation unsafe? Emotion. Is a recreational flyer emotionally upset? Are there tears flowing? I mean, how do you determine that? But at the same time, as stated earlier, recreational flight of both unmanned aircraft, both line of sight and FPV, have demonstrated to have therapeutic effects for people suffering from mental conditions such as PTSD, anxiety, depression. No one person or one organization's duty to restrict the ability to fly based on this, but should be left to the judgment of the recreational flyer. I will never tell somebody to not fly because they are, stressed out. I fly as a form of stress relief. Um, so, all right. Here we get into safety event reporting procedures. So, to support and promote a safety culture among all CBOs and recreational flyers, the FAA recommends but does not require that a comprehensive set of safety guidelines address safety events. CBOs should consider including a safety event reporting requirement for recreational flyers. Depending on the size and mission of the CBO, gathering such data may provide substantial benefits to the CBOs as they would better understand the trends and risks posed by UAS and could use the information to devise appropriate mitigations. And they include a nice bulleted list in the document. I didn't want to copy and paste the whole thing, but what our response is that this data would be of limited to no use to a CBO and result in an onerous amount of data to be collected and stored by the CBO. Additionally, a CBO could be the overarching organization, but be host to many chapters who function independently of one another. Additionally, these types of safety events happen at a minute detail almost all the time. A bent propeller would constitute a functional failure, and a broken arm of a multi-rotor would constitute a structural failure. Neither of these occurrences would justify the CBO organization to step in to review. Recommend either removing this entire section or at its most basic level, ask CBOs to recommend that the recreational flyer submit data relating to a safety event of substantial happening at their discretion to the NASA UAS Safety Reporting System, where the user and their data can be appropriately anonymized. Recommend removing this section.
Yeah, and this is one where across the drone advisory committee, anyone who's involved in crewed aviation is they love this. They love the NASA anonymous reporting structure. They feel that it's changed the culture in the FAA, and we've had hour-long discussions on this as well. And those of us in small UAS, just we're in a state of continual eye rolling. We're really trying to figure out. All right, is there some little pony wandering around in the barn here? We're struggling to find it. I think Josh, you hit the response on the head. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, is this
Yeah.
the section where it talks about like pilot error too, or is that farther down?
Yeah. But it's like, oops, I thought I wasn't going to hit the tree, but, I
That
hit the tree
Scraggle
when I
jumped
was
out from
shooting.
nowhere. Pilot error. Better
Right.
log it.
Yeah, right.
Oh, my voltage
s-
sagged and I couldn't pull out of the dive fast enough. We better report that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this deals with the same thing. While it is not required, a CBO that elects to gather safety event reports is strongly encouraged to submit the data voluntarily to the UAS safety team. And then our response to that is, as above, CBO should not need to report any kind of safety event to the UAS safety team. That data should be submitted by the recreational flyer at their discretion to the NASA UAS safety reporting system, where the user and their data can be appropriately anonymized. The UAS safety team can use that system to identify trends that may need attention and communication to the recreational UAS community as a whole. Recommend changing this section in accordance with this comment. So their ability to use that system is the same as ours. I'm sure they probably have a heightened ability to use that system, but there's no reason that they can't data scrub, the NASA UAS safety reporting system or whatever information any CBO would send them.
And the upside here is that if information is submitted to the NASA folks for the ANSR, then it will be anonymized, and so they'll strip out any PI personal information, and the FAA absolutely does not have access to the personal information that is part of the submission. So while we really disagree with the CBO being recommending or capturing this level of personal information, the areas of litigation just make my hair get more gray. And I think this response is completely appropriate. And the good news is, to underscore the point of using the NASA system, as the FAA does, that while they have lots of analytic capability, there is no personal information. No names are available to anyone in the FAA within the NASA database.
Absolutely. All right. So questions, comments, any other changes? I know I went through those fast. There was just 7 pages of it. So I did want to
So you
hear back
mentioned
from
we
any of this.
talk a lot about was it the blind people not being able, or not deaf people not being able to fly FPV? Did we?
Yeah, I did.
go
I
through
covered that. So right here it says CBO should prohibit any person from flying an unmanned aircraft or participating in the operation of a UAS that the person knows or has a reason to know they have a physical or mental condition that would interfere. So what I wrote here was recreational flight of both unmanned and aircraft. Unmanned aircraft, both line of sight and FPV, have been demonstrated to have therapeutic effect for people suffering from mental conditions such
Yeah,
as
I don't.
PTSD, anxiety. I also said that additionally, there are individuals who may have a physical disability that may limit their day-to-day activities in one form or another, but are more than capable of flying an unmanned aircraft.
Maybe we want to
Right,
call out
but I don't.
more specifically,
Examples?
saying, for example, someone who is deaf can fly a crewed aircraft, can fly FPV perfectly fine, but the visual observer can't communicate with them, and therefore they're not allowed to fly FPV.
Mention the deaf explicitly. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think. How do we spin? Because if you read the FAA statement carefully, they're not restricting anyone, and so in contrast to what XChat was saying, I do not read into this that if you're deaf, you cannot fly FPV. There has to be accommodation to make the communication viable, which I think is a positive comment that we could make. But I don't see a restriction here. As long as as long as they're fit to be a visual observer, that's fine. And so you do have to be able to see, and you have to be able to communicate. And
Well, I
those
mean, I kind of get the point that he's going for. So, I
Well,
know there.
I know it was tongue firmly in cheek, but I was trying to garner some seriousness from the comedy.
Well, I mean, there. I don't want CBOs to be making snap judgments at the same time. I get where he's coming from on who can and can't fly.
Yep.
There's an excellent FPV pilot out there, and I think probably more than one that has no use of one of his arms or hands, and he flies completely with one hand, and that's impressive as hell. But there could
Right.
be a snap judgment made by somebody that says, "Oh, well, you can't operate the controls."
Right.
Or oh, you're deaf, or something like
Well,
that. It
does
just
like
absolutely
Right.
doesn't
like
make sense.
grabbing their shoulder count as being within communication? And
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bruce has commented here, but I don't see anything in here that says that if you're deaf, there's an issue. So I mean, you read the statement that the FAA has written, and as long as you can communicate in some manner or fashion with the individual who's pilot in command, I don't see an
So
issue.
maybe what if I say
I like the idea of including something about if you're
with
deaf.
or without reasonable accommodation?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Doesn't support paraplegics. Okay.
Well, extra, what they need is a automatic voice-to-text translator that pops up in your FPV goggles.
Let's see. I can.
Yeah, prearranged signals.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's some level of communication that is understood by both parties, it doesn't matter. It's a reasonable accommodation. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. So I like that.
To take a little bit of wordage out of the ADA.
There you go. So while folks are thinking about any additional comments or jokes, my thanks, Josh, to you and Alex and Dan. I think this is an excellent set of comments. We've taken it seriously. They're very professional. I love the tone of this. I think it's directive, it's productive, and it's also very professional, as I said. So I think it's a good set of responses.
All right. So, guys, if you have any comments on this, just let us know. Reach out to us in one form, DM one of us so that we can make adjustments. But barring any major changes, we're going to go ahead and post this up on our website pretty quickly. Feel free to utilize it. Now, keep in mind that you have to email your comments directly to
Or
the person
handed.
the person at
You're
the
still planning
FAA.
on handing them in person, huh?
Alex is determined to hand these in.
For some reason, he wants to meet the individual who's behind
No,
this.
I don't want to meet it. I just want to hand it in because I think that's funny.
So this is a good point, because this is a different process from the notice of public
Yeah, it is different.
notice, NPRM.
Can we
public
get that
rulemaking.
email? I gotta find the FAA advisory.
I think I have a link.
So what the FAA wants us to do is use their form, fill out their form with the comments, and then send your comments to this individual. So, as Josh said, we'll post this up to our website so that you can have it for your reference.
There you go,
And
Josh.
Thank you.
the date, this is due to the FAA by, was it August 8 or 7?
9th.
9th, August 9th.
Okay.
We're all wrong.
Okay, August
Trying to get
9th.
it done early.
So here, let me zoom this in a little bit. Right here is a link to email
That's
your
a
comments.
different one. That's the
that is,
the
you're
one
right.
below it.
I'm sorry, we want Emily Rogers. So you click the link here, and that's how you submit them.
Don't they say they
mail them?
They attached an example of how they want.
Yeah,
I've never
Yeah,
really
there's
seen
a
Yes.
draft
Microsoft
doc.
Yes,
Word doc.
yes, draft document
comment grid.
Yes.
They want you to fill it out like that.
Hmm.
So,
So we might have to reform ours.
again, do me a favor, guys. Once we get this live, we'll push it out on Facebook. We'll drop it here in Discord. Please get the message out there. Help us reach as many people as we can. I don't think we're going to get 53,000 comments, but if we even get a small fraction of that, I think our point will be made.
I want to see
I
those
haven't
53,000
seen-
people line up and hand them in person.
That would be
I
hilarious.
would love to
So-
see that.
I
So
have not
Bruce-
seen any other organizations any kind of response like this. I know the AMA put out a general response saying, it's not perfect, but we worked on this and it paves the way and stuff like that. Whereas we're taking a direct approach.
And so Bruce is saying the advisory circular is such a sneaky way to try and extend regulatory control via indirection through CBOs.
I agree.
I don't know, because there's not much here that is news to us. So is I think, is it, does it all make us, roll our eyes a little bit? Yeah. However, I don't see rulemaking going on here. It is finally a institutionalization of the CBO, but new rules? No.
It's getting close.
The only exception I would say is that they are riding the line fairly closely. They're looking for CBOs to enforce some actions that aren't currently in regulations, such as procedures for night flight.
I am completely in
Yep.
agreement on those.
I was going to say the
where
same thing, the night one. Like,
those are good.
if you can't be a CBO, unless your regulations say you have to have a light that can be seen from 3 statute miles, all of a sudden they've made a new rule.
Right.
Yeah.
And the enforcement part. They want the CBO to enforce. Take a hike. Though I agree. Those are completely out of
Left
here.
field. Yeah. So the other question that I have is that a lot of this document is recommended but not required, and the question that I would posit to just about everybody is, what if you don't have those? Are you just going to automatically be denied? I mean, at what point do you have a case for kind of coming back at the FAA and saying, look, you said this wasn't required? So it'll be interesting to see how these kind of roll out.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
again,
And
we're
I
going
would
to err on
agree.
the side of being more safe than sorry, but
Right. Yeah, and I would agree with Bruce's point. The rule already exists, and that's really what I was saying. Is you have to follow the safety guidelines of a CBO.
Mhm.
And those of us who've been watching us for a bit, we've had a set of safety guidelines up for coming up on 3 years.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what Bruce is saying is that the Reauthorization Act says you have to follow the guidelines of a CBO. Now the FAA is using the ability to call somebody a CBO
become a CBO
as a
right.
way of
Yep.
making new regulations or refining things
Yeah.
without having to go through the process of creating those as you normally
And
would.
I think he's on, a really good point on that. I agree.
Yep.
I agree with that. Yep. So we will modify our safety guidelines as we mentioned, and we will apply common sense, and we'll see if the FAA has issue with them.
We'll do our best to let people know how our process is going when we're
Mhm.
applying to become a CBO. Probably be told we
Absolutely.
can't we can't reveal anything.
You've
Right,
been embargoed.
Embargo the data again. Oh man.
So
Okay.
back-
We're not salty.
are-
I
I should mention that we've started 2 new FAA Drone Advisory Committee tasking groups. One has to do with a safety framework, which should be pretty cool, and it's a good group of people involved in it, and they're taking it very seriously. And essentially, the safety objective of crewed aircraft is the number of fatalities per year, and it's based on either number of flight hours or the number of passenger hours.
So
or
we should be
flights.
good.
So we are working on what is an appropriate and intelligent safety objective for UAS. So that's really the effort, and that should be awesome. The second tasking group has to do with integrating aviation, STEM, and STEAM into curricula for K through 12 or kindergarten through 12th grade. And I'm really excited about that. Alex is also on that tasking group as well as I am as well. And that should be very productive. And we will likely survey I think the essence right now is there's a lot of good work going on, and it's being done piecemeal. Some larger organizations like AOPA with 200 high schools working on a You Can Fly class. Alex is a member of GATA, an organization that's worldwide. Flight Test has classes, so there are a lot of organizations that have classes, and so we hope to do this with some level of official blessing and maybe even funding from the federal government that would help promote STEM education with an aviation flavor in K through 12, and so that's useful. EAA venture has 3 crashes so far. So TextJet with those, I assume those were all manned aircraft or crewed aircraft. Yes. Okay. That's. I'm sorry to hear that. We've got a lot of friends out there at in Wisconsin. Yeah, the numbers are, there still are 0 fatalities from electric small UAS, to date. So, we're asserting that, or I'm asserting that number of fatalities per year is a
Pretty
worthless.
good metric.
Well, it's a
Mhm.
worthless metric because a metric should be aspirational and should motivate people to improve the overall objective. And if your objective is to try to improve safety, what the heck are you measuring if you're already way off the scale?
And even the
don't
number
take
of confirmed drone to aircraft incidences are extremely small.
I
Right.
think still
Right.
under 10.
Yes.
close
Yeah.
to
So
it.
if we've got under 10, and we've got 10 roughly, we've got 10 million hours of flight, drone flights a year in the United States alone. The numbers are, we're way beyond an order magnitude of what the FAA is looking for. So
Mhm.
so it's a good discussion. I'm enthused, and it's a great group of people working on it. So that's one of the 2 tasking groups, and then of course we're working on about the beyond visual line of sight aviation rule making committee, and that's the one what we have to that
Can't
the,
talk
all the
about.
information is embargoed, but it's really time consuming. There are lots of writing, lots of reading, so hopefully that'll be productive.
Yeah, and Bruce, just don't bring up the numbers of the drone-on-drone collisions. There's a few of
Especially
those,
Alex's, I hear he's really bad.
but they don't result in death or damage to people.
Right.
Just
I think I had
Alex's
at least
soul.
I think I had at least 5 this past at the
Oh,
last
goodness.
race on Sunday.
5
they're
incidents where
probably-
you crashed into another drone. So did you report those to NASA?
Oh,
No.
jeez.
I'm not gonna do that. It's not required.
We can't take you anywhere, man.
I might report it to the NTSB, but because that
Well,
is technically required, but I don't think anyone's done that yet.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the first.
So the
Alex,
NTS,
you found that there's an NPRM coming out from
it's already
the
done.
NTSB done. So
already-
yeah, the comments
It's
are
already
closed.
comments are done.
AUVSI saw, commented on it and put in comments. So I guess that they want to have NTSB have jurisdiction over UAS crashes.
So,
was that
No,
the essence of it?
it's the
It's a
point at which
reporting.
NTS, it's the point at which NTSB it gets involved into a drone crash or a UAS crash. So currently, it has to be any UAS over 300 pounds, I do believe, if I read
Yep.
the article correctly, and a VUC and one other organization, a small UAS coalition, are advocating that it change from a weight category to a monetary damage category. being anything over $500 in damage, property or personal, which is very small.
Pretty tiny.
Yeah, what if you've
Isn't
got a
that-
brand new
isn't that
$500
the same-
GoPro that gets damaged in a race? Well, you wouldn't have
Alex,
it on in a
isn't that the
race.
same?
That's
Isn't
too
that
much
the same-
weight.
Isn't that the same threshold as the Part 107?
I
report?
believe so.
It is.
I
They
believe
want it
so.
to be more in line with Part 107, is what they stated. I don't know that I agree with that.
As the Japanese would say to me, oh, Messina-san, it will be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, if you're flying freestyle and you have a midair with somebody else and you both crash and destroy GoPros and a battery, like you're way over
There's
$500.
Yeah, that
So-
seems like a nutty threshold.
Yeah, it seems kind of like it is.
TextJet wants us
Yeah,
to know it's
we-
for commercial flights.
Yeah, right.
It
And
is.
a lot of the work that we do is with Part 107 folks, but that's still, to me, it's still nutty.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing I mean, let's say for an example, you're doing a real estate job, and you have your $1,200 Mavic out there, and you crash that, then NTSB is crawling around
Your
and
Cinelifter.
yeah. So
And
again,
and what is
it's-
recreational and what is
Right.
should be Part
yeah, we
107
understand.
is really like almost everything really falls under 107. So
Mhm.
Yeah, we understand that you have to, that this is, if you crash and if you have that's why my question was with respect to 107, and you have to do more than $500 damage to property, then you are required to report that incident to the FAA. So I get, we understand that.
I believe that number doesn't include the UAS, so that would not include that GoPro.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
external damage.
it would
yeah.
include your
that's
friend's GoPro if you crashed into him.
Or car. Yeah.
Or how do you know your friend didn't crash into you?
It's always your friend. You crashed into your. No, it's always the friend that crashes into you, isn't it?
I mean,
Oh man. Okay.
uh,
All right,
next,
heavy.
yeah, I know
That's right.
we're going
There
a
you
little
go.
off kilter here, but I'm gonna leave you guys with one thing. So we had the Olympics, obviously started this last week. They had a pretty cool drone demonstration there.
I haven't seen it yet. A couple
Oh,
people,
the-
1,800
yeah.
drones.
The Intel
So-
one.
So
Who
so-
did it? Do we know? Was it
Intel.
Intel?
Intel, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I thought they slowed that
I
down,
thought they
but
laid those people off.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a smaller show than their normal one.
It was
or
still
than
pretty
they've done
impressive
before.
though.
1,800
I've only
think
seen
drones.
a couple of videos here and there about it, but my question to you is, and think of this as kind of a poll: how long before drone racing makes it into the
Yeah, Alex, are you
Um,
lobbying the Olympic Committee to get drone
and
racing? in?
Josh, do you have
I can't say anything about it yet.
Are there any YouTube videos on the Olympic drones?
Sure.
There's some out there. And to talk to some
think
of the
drones are
people that
at-
are,
So,
some of the people are in the comments talking about the 107 versus recreational, and the way the FAA states it, if you're flying purely for the fun of it, it's recreational. If you're flying for any other reason, your reason is I want to create a popular YouTube channel, even if it's not monetized. If I want to create this because I want to trade my time for you, or I'm doing it as a favor for somebody else, that's not for fun or recreation. If you're doing this for any reason besides it's just for the fun of it, it's not recreational and you need a Part 107. Now, they don't seem to be really going after people for that, but that's, I don't know. Do you want to risk it? That's what it is.
so going back to a little bit earlier, when we were trying to think of an acronym for props, what it could stand for. I don't have a good one yet, but what I have right now is Professional and Recreational Operator Point System.
Oh, hey, look at that. Came up with that. Cool. All right, so here we go.
Could be
We may have
better,
lost
but
Dave, but guys, don't feel like you need to stick around. I know we're past time. If you need to go. At this point, we're just kind of messing about. But
So
who is
to
that
answer
drone
BDA's
shot?
question there, like if you're flying, the intent of your flight is for fun, and you happen to capture something interesting and you post it on YouTube later, that's probably still fine being recreational from what I've understood.
That would be fine. Not really.
It's
not a
supposed to
pro-
be the
not
intent
problem.
of your flight when you're taking off. Like, I'm taking off, I'm intending to have fun.
Well, I believe you can change the intent mid-flight too. So I'm not 100% certain on that.
Yeah, that might be complicated.
Yeah,
It's
it might be.
tricky. Just a
Yeah.
gray area.
We've got that video going of the drone show. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, I'll have to click on your live button there to make it show up. Watch stream. Now other people can see the giant ball floating in the sky.
That's
Oh, you can hear them too.
Yeah, I can hear something.
Oh, they make a giant globe.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is impressive.
Is it an authentic representation of the continents?
Yep. There's Australia right there.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Is New
You know, they
Zealand
should
there
align-
anywhere? I don't see it.
Yeah, it's right up in here.
Is there one or two drones?
Since
Yeah.
it's at night, they should have made it look like the moon and lined it up with the moon, so we have two
Oh,
moons.
that'd be cool.
I thought you were going to ask if they had strobes on them that could be seen from 3 statute miles.
Yeah, do those the lights.
That should. Well, it's not in the U.S. It doesn't have to, but the Intel ones do.
Yeah.
At least, yeah, because you can see the drone light show from quite a distance away.
Yeah.
So a lonely fatality's not in here. Never mind.
All right. Excellent.
So, anywho, on that note, guys, thank you for joining. Again, if you have questions or comments on our response to the advisory circular, feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'll get the comments adjusted, and then we'll get those up pretty quickly on the website so that you guys can reference them, as well as links to submit your comments. So, with that, I bid you all a good evening and great rest of your week.
Thanks for all the comments, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Yep,
Great job
absolutely.
on the
Thank
AC.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.